Welcome to the City of Glendale's Community Development Block Grant Advisory Committee special meeting, October 26, 2016. Can we start with roll call, please?
Committee members Avedisian?
Yes.
Markarian is absent. Ramirez?
Here.
Tashin is absent. Chair Armenian?
Present.
The agenda for the October 26, 2016 special meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee was posted on or before Friday, October 21, 2016 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Item 2, minutes. A, approval of the minutes of the August 8, 2016 CDBG Advisory Committee special meeting.
I move approval of minutes.
Second.
Committee members Avedisian?
Yes.
Markarian is absent. Ramirez?
Yes.
Tashin is absent. Chair Armenian?
Yes.
Item 3, oral communications. I don't have any cards. Item 4, business agenda. A, action items. At 1, selection of new chair and vice chair.
So today we'll be selecting a new chair of the CDBG committee. And as part of that process, I'd like to ask the recording secretary to take over the meeting for this portion in order to conduct nominations on the floor as well as a vote.
Thank you. The business before the CDBG Advisory Committee is the selection of a new chair. I will now entertain nominations for that office.
Our vice chair's not here and not coming, right?
Committee Member Ramirez, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, yes, he has notified the staff that he may be here depending on a previous engagement, but for now he's not present. And
well, I would like to nominate Member Avedisian.
I'll second that.
I have one nomination for Committee Member Avedisian for the office of chair. I will now take roll call. Committee Member Armenian?
Yes.
Committee Member Avedisian?
Yes.
Markarian is absent. Ramirez?
Yes.
And Tashin is absent. I now declare Committee Member Avedisian the duly elected chair of the CDBG Advisory Committee. Mr. Chair, the task before you now is to open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, committee members. I guess we open the nomination for vice chair. Any nominations?
Nominate Committee Member Lila Ramirez for vice chair.
I second it.
Okay. I'll go ahead and take roll call. Committee Member Armenian?
Yes.
Markarian is absent. Ramirez?
Yes.
Tashin is absent, and Chair Avedisian.
Yes.
I now declare Committee Member Ramirez the duly elected Vice Chair of the CDBG Advisory Committee.
Great. I want to congratulate my colleagues.
Very good. Very good.
On your new positions. And I also want to express appreciation for my colleagues for supporting my chairmanship, which I think lasted longer than normal. But we wanted to make a change because it's always good to change leadership and have different people have the experience. So I look forward to your leadership, Chairman Avedisian. Maybe we can formally change spots here so that you can take your location here at the gavel. Be careful of Lila.
Uh-oh.
Move this. Thank you.
I guess we'll start. I have to thank you, our previous chair, Mr. Armenian, for your leadership for last 2 years, at least a year and a half, 2 years that I've been involved with the CDBG. I think you brought a different perspective to the committee, and I think we all learned something different, and we open up our minds and eyes to see what we could do better for the future for our community and how we can help out the community overall. I hope I can serve, if not as good, as close as possibly I can, to serve as what you have done and continue on with it.
Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you, and congratulations, co-chair, Mrs. Ramirez. I'm sure we'll have a lot of good days and some maybe harder days overall.
Good days.
The committee, and that's what I look for. I like always to have consistency and friendship amongst the board members, that we can work better and efficiently for the betterment of our community and everything that we do. So thank you for your work also. Okay, next. Go to next.
Sure. Next on the agenda is 4A2, receive report on abbreviated funding applications for fiscal year 2016-17 CDBG Public Social Service Program income funds, and deliberate and approve funding recommendations.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Back in August 2016, the staff had presented a report to the CDBG Advisory Committee, notifying the committee that we had some additional funding as a result of a home loan, rehab loan that was repaid back to the city, and that we were going to reallocate some of those funds to capital projects for next year and for public social services for this current year. And this item is in regards to the social service funds that were reprogrammed for this year. We have currently $9,000 that were RFP'd out to the community for nonprofits, to existing CDBG programs, to fund what we would like to see as additional persons to be served. So it's kind of an expansion of the current programs that they're currently operating. We went out to RFP about a month ago, and we did receive 5 social service applications, which you have in your packet. I'll read those out for the record. They came in from Community Outreach Project from Armenian Relief Society for $9,000. Youth Employment Programs from Glendale Youth Alliance for $9,000. The Zone Program from the Salvation Army for $9,000. Glendale Fair Housing Program, the Housing Rights Center for $5,000. And Door of Hope, Enhancement of Children's Programs for $9,000. Total of $41,000 in request. We have funds available for $9,000. We did put a little spreadsheet showing the additional funds requested and proposed number of persons to be served by the agencies in addition to their current numbers. All these agencies are currently operating the CDBG program. And for the first quarter, we did receive the reports, and everyone seems to be doing fine at their projected service levels. So we wanted to get the recommendations from the advisory committee to allocate these funds, which could only be used for this fiscal year. They cannot be carried for the next year, and we can put this in capital programs. But of course, our recommendation that because social services funds are really highly needed in the community, that we'd like to have them allocated to the programs, one or more programs for this current year.
Okay, thank you. Question?
Yeah, I have a question regarding your last statement, the possibility of putting it into capital programs, but is that subject to the same requirement of being spent this year?
Committee Member Armenian, no, you don't have to spend it this year. You could spend it following year. It would just roll over as part of a regular entitlement program funds till next year.
Oh, so we would actually allocate it to we would allocate it next year?
Yes.
Okay. It would just be lumped in with something we're going to discuss a little bit later on today.
Correct.
Okay. So the 400,000, it would be 409,000 in theory. Okay.
Correct.
But if it is social service, then it needs to be spent this year.
That's correct.
And is it your expectation that they would be able to do that, and given that we only have 2 months left?
Well, Committee Member Armenian, members of the committee, we actually have this until July, June 30th. Because we're fiscal year versus the calendar year.
Got it, okay.
So we do have sufficient time to, we do have to go to council to get approval. We do have to amend the contracts. So we would expect something hopefully in December to have the committee, have the agencies expend the funds for 7 months.
Got it.
Ramirez, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Do we have any suggestions?
Well, before we go there, I know that in the audience we have several of the applicants here. I don't know if we wanted to give them a couple-minute opportunity to summarize. I see Door of Hope here and ARS here. I don't know who the third gentleman is.
That's Catholic Charities.
Catholic Charities, okay. And they were not an applicant.
We did notify the agencies that we will be reviewing proposals. We didn't ask them necessarily to come and answer questions or present. We wanted to go by what is proposed on their written applications.
Okay. You don't want to bias it.
I'd leave it up to certainly the chair and the committee to decide that.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have any questions for the organizations that are here?
Well, these are all programs that we're familiar with. Obviously, we funded all of them from a social service perspective, and we know about the track record of all of them. I would say that over the years, one of the 5 organizations, the one we have funded the least in terms of dollar amount is the Glendale Fair Housing Program and Housing Rights Center. I don't know if staff has any perspective about the needs. I know the housing issue generally is generally in the region. I'm familiar that it's a very big issue because of the price of real estate and cost of housing and it drives people out, and so that obviously always creates tension in the housing market. So I don't know if there anything we want to highlight there.
Yes, Mr. Armin, yes, that's a very good point. We have been in touch with the Housing Rights Center, which is the only agency that provides the free tenant landlord counseling services besides some of the other agencies like Neighbor Legal Services, but that's contracted by the city. They actually expressed some concerns about their funding cuts because they have certainly increased their numbers. Their numbers are going to increase from 400 to 700 with additional funds. That's the number that they intend to serve, which has been around the range of the previous years, but apparently they have not received any increases in funding for the last 10 years. In fact, they've received less money, yet their numbers have increased twofold. Housing is certainly a very high priority for the city. As you know, we've had discussions with City Council and Housing Authority regarding the proposed rent control ordinance and affordable housing options. Certainly, Housing Rights Center is part of that discussion since they do take an enormous amount of calls from the community to address some of those questions, such as a just cause eviction, eviction notices. They put on 2-3 workshops a year for the city. So they are an agency that has already expressed their desire, their request to have funds increase just to meet the demand. And to meet the funding cuts that they had from previous years. They're the only agency that's here, except for Glendale Youth Alliance, that has not received an increase in funding, either from the abbreviated RFP process or from the regular CDBG review process in February. So the other agencies have received increases. They're the only ones that have received decreases, except for GYA. So staff is certainly really desires to have some discussion on meeting their goals of funding them at a certain level that they can maintain that housing hotline and counseling that's really highly needed this year, especially, again, as we approach some housing issues in the city.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I have a question. Do you have a question?
I was just going to say they only asked for $5,000, however.
Yes, Committee Member Ramirez, they felt that was the funds that they could certainly anticipate receiving. and they've expressed the other concerns. They do get some other funds from housing, but this would be their additional funds would provide the additional support needed for the program to operate. Again, we would certainly look at any other funds available in the housing field that would help match, that 5,000, whether it's 2,000 or 3,000. We would request that from housing to provide that additional funding for them to meet that gap. Next year, you will have the same situation. Well, they will certainly come in with a minimum threshold of funding request because of their increase in cost. The fact that the numbers are going up. It's the only program where numbers really have skyrocketed as far as calls go and services go. So you will see this again coming February 2017 with need. And they're not here to answer that question, but certainly it's one of those.
My preference would be to give 9,000 to in one sum instead of breaking it up.
That's what I was going to ask a question. Is there a direction or is a policy that we have to give one, or can be divided to 2, 3? How is the system, or it's
Mr. Chair, the staff certainly would love to have fill everybody's plate here. Obviously, it's unfortunate that we don't have enough funds. From 41,000 to 9,000, there's not enough funding. We certainly don't have issues with funding 2 agencies. When we get to 3 or 4, all 5, when they get 1,000 apiece, something like that, it becomes more challenging for staff to do contracts and the agencies to revise budgets. So we don't recommend the extra work that agencies would have to go through for $1,000 for staff. But our biggest, certainly, fund at least 2 that the committee would like to recommend.
okay? Thank you. Do we have any suggestions?
Well, I'm also,
Recommendations?
with 9,000, you don't want to divide it up in too many ways because it just becomes inefficient for everyone. But I'd be open to 1 or 2, but not more than 2, dividing it not more than 2 ways.
Well, I would like to give consideration to the GYA because they haven't received increase in the past, and they just allocated all to the program they absorb all the costs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's most efficient and effective use of this amount of funds.
Okay. I happen to agree with that. I think we should list, I don't know the dollar amounts. I will leave it to the committee to decide. But I would think the dollar amount, besides the dollar amount, GYA and fair housing program, I think those would be the 2 committees or 2 organizations that I would personally suggest to divide these funds to.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's any recommendation from the committee members? Any other?
I do not prefer to break it up. I just prefer the one sum.
Mm-hmm. Are you suggesting that GYA?
GYA is my first,
Your first choice?
Yeah.
If you had to pick just one?
if I had to pick just one.
Okay.
I would still, in my mind, I would think that still, I understand and I agree that all these organizations need money. And whether they've got more last year or not, they got some raises and some of them deductions. But I think just to help out at least 2 instead of just 1 organization, I think I would suggest that we go with 2 organizations, and then we can decide on the dollar amount how much each gets. We can go from there.
Well, we can take care of fair housing when they come in with their proposal for the new funds.
Yeah, my point of view is that, with fair housing, they've always been the least recipient. in terms of over the years that I've been at least part
I've
of the
worked with
committee.
fair housing, so I understand.
Yeah, so
You don't have to sell them to me.
So I feel compelled to allocate some funds there. I don't know whether it's the full 5,000, whether you split it 50-50. I do believe Glendale Youth Alliance serves a really important role in our community with youth employment particularly, and we know that that's always a good way to, orient our youth in the right direction, and they do an important job there with GYA. So I'd be open to a 50-50 split if you feel like we should just give fair housing their full 5 that since they did not apply for the full amount, give them their 5 and give the balance to Glendale Youth. I think some sort of split that way is what my thinking is.
Well, that's 2 thinkings to 1, so go ahead and make your motion.
They're close. The thinkings are close, Ms. Ramirez.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make I don't know if staff has a preference whether on the amounts, on how we split it.
Mr. Armenian, again, we want to work with our housing departments. It's a housing issue. Again, it's a city as well, and we wanted to see if they certainly will assist us with the funding. So
through the city, you mean through the city?
Through the housing, which is
Yeah.
federal housing funds, which is part of our action plan. It's part of our HUD funds.
Right.
So that we would split it 50-50, and maybe it's 2,500 CDBG, and they pay for the other 2,500 out of housing funds. And again, that leverages more money for the second project, whichever would be.
Oh, I see. So your idea is do half the requested amount, and then use the rest for one of the other organizations.
That's one option, or the committee could certainly.
But
provide.
do we know for sure they can leverage the funds off of?
We will
Yeah.
make sure that they were able
Okay.
to do that. I know they certainly leveraging is important. We would have to leverage for them to leverage as well.
Mm-hmm.
I like that idea.
So that would leave 6,500.
Yeah, 6,500 to the GYA and 2,500 to the housing, right? You
Yeah.
agree with it? Is
If 2,500 will help them at all, if fair housing is important, I would give them 9,000.
Well, I totally understand. I believe, from what staff is telling us and the way that they can subsidize it and fill up the gap, I think with that said,
Get matching.
the matching that what they want, they're asking for. So I think that would be the easiest way of going around in the right way. So at least GYA does a lot for our youths and stuff. So I think it would be a right choice at this point.
I have a question to staff. If we were to allocate 4,500, in other words, split the 9,000 two ways, you could leverage that for matching that amount of matching. How does the matching actually work?
That's a good question. I don't think they would match it all that with housing funds if they would increase that much more. We certainly want to review it, as Committee Member Ramirez mentioned, this in February again, to see what the costs are going to be for the next year. But it's hard to say whether they would match additional more than what's being kind of requested by the agency.
No, I know, but if we were to allocate 4,500 versus the 5,000 they're requesting, how much would they potentially
Well,
qualify?
potentially $500 just to meet the $5,000.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It wouldn't go beyond the 5,000.
Got it.
And also, if I may, Mr. Chair, we do have, rounding the numbers, we did round it, and we do have an actual allocation of 9,253. We rounded it only to do the numbers for the agencies to come up with some figures, but we do have 9,253 that could be fully allocated to social services this year.
So exact amount would be 9,253 instead of the 9,000. So, however we divide it, that's $253 we could add to either or. Okay.
Correct, Mr. Chair.
So if we were to allocate 2,500, as you mentioned, to fair housing. We could potentially match that with another 2,500 to reach their proposal amount. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, before we make the decision, all 5 of these organizations we have tremendous track record with, and they deliver on their promises, so that obviously always makes it difficult. But at the end of the day, this is not a huge amount. So I would make a motion for, we do 2,500 for a housing program, and then do the balance on Glendale Youth Alliance.
Okay. Have a motion? You have a second? No pressure. All right.
Second it
You don't
yourself.
have a second.
Well, I move that we give the 9,000 to the Glendale Youth Alliance.
Make him a second motion. 9,000 to GYA. Do we have a second on that? I guess not.
The chair, is the chair
The
able
chair
to
does
say?
have the option of passing the gavel to someone else. That is an option, so that he can the motion himself.
So you can pass the gavel so he can vote against me?
According to Robert's Rules of Order, he is able to do that.
And who
To
do you
break a
pass
tie?
it to? The
break a tie?
What's your shirt? Break the tie. Okay.
Well, since you're not willing to second my motion, go ahead and make your other one, and I'll support you.
I'll restate the
But
motion.
I think 2,500 to fair housing.
Well, he's
It's
saying about
almost-
the 5,000, he's going to,
I'm
with the
doing it-
housing fund, that the same amount, the 5,000, they'll get what they're asking for. Half from here and half from the city's housing.
How do we know that, in fact, we give them 5,000 and they couldn't get another 1,500 or 2,500 with the same process?
I asked that question previously, and Mr. Carrillo stated that it would only be
He
up to...
wasn't sure, he said.
You want to restate what you said?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, it's possible, anything's possible of having a different amount, but we want to certainly be fair with the housing funds that we get from, again, their HUD funds, to share responsibility with the funding for our housing services, and they are primarily funded out of CDBG, but we do get assistance from the extra housing funds from the housing, I believe it's a home program. I can't necessarily speak for them, but I have had discussions with staff, and they're saying if you could get some match funds, and we can make the adjustments, and we'll work with you. So I think it's only fair to say that we would have a match from them. If it's the $2,500, then we will get a match from them.
So what if I make a motion to give the $9,000 to fair housing?
Yeah, I already stated my point of view, which I'd like. I generally agree that we should focus, but I think all 5 of these organizations, do great work, and so, I'd like to see us split it 2 ways, particularly since there's an opportunity, a good likelihood, I'll say, that we can get some additional money for fair housing through doing a match scenario. So that actually gets your 9,000 up to 11,500 potentially in terms of the money we're bringing to the situation. So that's kind of what my logic was.
My concern is that when we put out an RFP and we say we have $9,000 available and people are putting in their bid based on that amount that's available to them, and then we come over here and decide we're going to dish it out, that's kind of misrepresents.
That's kind of.
And I had thought the city council had asked us the last time we went through this to attempt to to give it out in the lump sum instead of splitting it up.
I don't recall that, but I mean, if you look at our process, generally speaking, everyone comes to the table with a lot more than what they get at the end
Yeah,
of the
but
day.
this is
So,
special funds. This is different.
Yeah. Last time we split it.
Right. And
Yeah, the $13,000 last time we did split it also.
yeah.
So it's this almost the same concept.
Well, I understand the
nothing much
concept.
different. I think we beat up this quite a bit, so I'm going to re-entertain a motion.
Okay.
And we can move forward. So if there is a motion, however, the splits, anyone wants to make a motion?
I'll try one more time. I'll reintroduce my motion, which is $2,500 to fair housing and the balance to Glendale Youth Alliance.
Second.
You have a second?
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Markarian is absent, Ramirez,
Yes.
Ashin is absent, Chair Avedisian.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And thank you to all the organizations that submitted in our response to the RFP.
Next on the agenda is 4A3, review and approve fiscal year 2017-18 CDBG program priorities. At A is a motion to approve the fiscal year 2017-18 CDBG program priorities.
Do you have any questions?
When we hear from staff.
Third.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have under item 4A3, you'll have a packet there of notes, summaries, information for our CDBG program priorities for fiscal year 2017-18. As I reported on the memo, it does have some needs assessment information from the census, from our review of needs from the community. By and large, one of certainly the largest input that we had was 2 years ago with the consolidated plan with the surveys and the community meetings. This year we did have another community meeting, which again basically went through the whole identification priorities, which by and large remained the same from previous years. We haven't seen anything drastically change from priorities of a year ago. So those, of course, are our main ones, which are youth, homeless, employment programs, crime and public safety, other human services such as mental health services was one of those that kind of caught people's attention. But by and large, it wasn't a significant change. We did have 49 people attend that meeting. We had 2 people provide us two written statements, and we did get an assessment from what's called the Community Health Needs Assessment, which is an assessment done by the hospitals, and they, of course, came out with some survey information that mental health services were very highly needed in the community, and that's, again, counseling, psychological services, treatments were one of those items that was certainly highly needed in the community as far as a health benefit. So by and large, it's the 5-year priorities which we've identified in your packet, and we certainly as staff have reviewed all the information that we've had, and we don't see a change that was significantly change the way we do the RFP or the needs assessments for the next year. We certainly see these programs as highly needed. Facility improvement programs, again, community did state a lot of input for parks and recreation facilities, whether they're in new parks or playgrounds or equipment upgrades. We certainly get a lot of comments from the community on the parks. Also, child care programs continue to be one of those where it's important to have affordable child care programs for working parents or parents that that need that type of assistance. We don't get into the aspect of housing too much, since our housing funds do take care of a lot of housing issues, and our homeless programs do address a lot of the homeless issues, although we do provide CDBG funds for homeless programs, and certainly the programs that are eligible CDBG continue to be high priority, and that's the street outreach and transitional housing for domestic violence survivors. Those are certainly two important aspects of that, along with homeless prevention, emergency shelters. They'll continue to be the homeless priorities for the next coming year, and we anticipate for the next 3 years of our consolidated plan period. So not much has changed. We haven't seen such a shift, other than some mentioning of some additional help with child care programs and mental health services.
Thank you. Any questions?
Have any?
I have one question. In the Exhibit 2 of the report, in terms of summary on needs assessment, there was a section on neighborhood improvement, community facilities, and talked about a variety of programs that the city has, as well as, measures such as traffic calming, that sort of thing. Those elements fall outside of the CDBG funding mechanism, do they not?
Yeah,
But those
Mr.
are
Amin,
part of the city's general budget.
Mr. Amin, yes, some of those are outside of the areas that we looked at, but certainly the questions that came up and the comments came up were in our target areas, and those were some traffic calming, pedestrian safety, which I know has been noted in the past. We actually do have now a city pedestrian committee, which I am part of, which I think was a comment we had last year from the committee, that we want to ensure that those funds that are outside of CDBG are used for pedestrian safety. There are some grants now. Certainly CDBG funds are eligible for some traffic calming, whether it be speed bumps, traffic circles, lights, certain items that are available for CDBG, but we haven't certainly identified those funds as part of the CDBG planning.
I mean, historically, I have not, at least as far as I've been part of CDBG, I have not seen CDBG funds, for example, that go for speed bumps and
Yes, that's correct,
streetlights and
Mr.
things
Amin.
like that.
When we had additional funds, when our funding was flush with funds, we did expend funds on traffic calming measures, traffic circles, lighting. Since our funds have been reduced, it has not appeared in the last few years in our plan. However, the city has a few programs that have been able to address some of those public safety issues. And again, as the committee continues to meet, they're addressing some of the priorities that we've identified here for traffic safety in those committee meetings, which I, again, part of that now. And certainly in southern Glendale, our target area has been viewed as one of those areas where we need some improvements, and a lot of it's public education. I'm sorry, Mr. Amin. I think your comment last year was public education, which was not a CDBG activity, but it's fair to say that there is going to be, certainly in the next few months, a lot more public education activities from the consultant the city's hired for a lot of the public safety programs, and we're working with the community, and some of the groups have commented on this. We're going to work with them to provide them the information on what we're coming up with.
So wouldn't these items kind of be the same as code enforcement? You took out code enforcement out of CDBG. Wouldn't traffic calm kind of go along with that?
That's correct, Committee Member Ramirez. Yes, just as code enforcement is highlighted here in the number of comments in the spreadsheet where the hearing, we've know that we'll relay this information to code enforcement so that they're aware of these issues. And certainly our arrangement with code enforcement is that the area will continue to be serviced as it was the CDBG, and of course the code enforcement staff has not changed their focus on the target area. But because it's a different source of funds, they actually have more flexibility now with the general fund to go beyond some of the boundary areas where CDBG could not go across the street able to do a little bit more flexibility. So even though we're not funding it, we continue to relay this information to code enforcement staff or via public works staff to address any street lights. We did have a comment on street light, I believe was on one of these streets here, and we forward that information to public works. Actually, this was GWP who handles street lights, and they began addressing that. So we do work hand in hand. This is very handy for us to provide to the other departments and get feedback as we do of our own parks department when there's issues there. So even though it's not block grant, it's still a city responsibility.
Yeah, and the reason I'm asking the question is we know that pedestrian safety and pedestrian fatalities are a very critical issue in our city. Unfortunately, we experience way too many casualties, and they usually happen in the more prevalent in the South Glendale area. Certainly, I know that there's issues because periodically I've been engaged with pedestrian safety task forces. And I know, for example, the lighting issue on South Glendale Avenue and the high speed of traffic and that sort of thing. But the reason I'm raising this is if we feel that, or staff feels like those things are being addressed through other channels and other mechanisms within the city, even though it came up as part of our focus group here, we're not ignoring it. It's just that it's being addressed in other areas within the city using other funds as opposed to CDBG funds. But if we feel that it's not, then I think that's a legitimate issue for us to look at, just like we look at homelessness issues and other types of programs that we support.
Correct. Yes, we will look at this as we increase hopefully funding in the future. That's something we could leverage as well, because there's never not enough funding to public safety programs, and we could leverage funds as the needs come up and as the funding becomes available.
And what about, sorry, I don't want to monopolize time, but I have a second question. So we've talked in the past sessions about parks and rec kind of facilities in the target areas for CDBG. In the past, we've actually funded some such priorities, but I believe in the last year or so, there were not actual proposed projects. They were outside of the target geographic target areas. Is there anything on the horizon that the department is looking at that do fall within the areas that we're looking at?
Well, Mr. Army, I'll speak for our director, but we certainly have a plan for our parks, and some of those parks, you're correct, are not in our target area. Columbus Elementary, the proposed soccer field. Fremont, which is a large CIP project, is not in our target area. Those are handled by other funds that are general revenue or development impact fees. We still get comments and continue to need to improve our southern Glendale parks, and that's, again, south of Broadway. Those, I don't sort of have a list of what's to be on the future 5 years. One of the main target areas has been Pacific Park, where, yes, we know we did that park in 2005. But
the park was opened 2003, and the artificial turf field opened March of 2014.
So our intent is as we finish one park, another park gets improved or gets used up a lot. And I know from our end, we do get a lot of use of our parks. So it's really the 5 large parks in southern Glendale, which will continue to need to upgrade and increase amenities for the increased number of patrons there.
So my only comment there is I would encourage staff to bring it to our attention as we enter the next funding cycle, because that's, at least for me as a committee member, it's a very important community benefit that we need to keep our eye on. I know we did some good projects, and so I'd like to make sure that if there are things that are on the horizon that fall within the the area that we're looking at, that we do consider those alongside every other program. But I appreciate this report, very good report, and I'm glad to hear about the level of engagement too within the community.
Very good.
So, Mr. Chair, we do need to entertain a motion approving the priorities. Again, these priorities are also inserted into the RFP for next year, CDBG, so when agencies apply, they know the priorities listed here would be certainly be reviewed during the RFP process, and those are mainly for social service programs and some of the capital programs, but mainly social services are these priorities, and we have a lot there, and certainly is needs everywhere.
Okay, well, I'd like to make a motion to approve fiscal year 2017 to 2018 CDBG program priorities.
Second.
Second.
Committee members Armenian?
Yes.
Markarian is absent. Ramirez?
Yes.
Ashton is absent. Chair Avedisian?
Yes.
Motion carries.
What's next, please?
Next is 4A4, review and approve preliminary fiscal year 2017-18 CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category. It is a motion to approve the preliminary fiscal year 2017-18 CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This report is regarding the next year's proposed funding plan for fiscal year 2017-2018. This report has a spreadsheet attached to it, which is our main spreadsheet we've used in the past to identify not necessarily projects, but also allocations for the next CDBG funding cycle. We are anticipating a $1,600,000 entitlement grant. That's a little bit less than what we currently have this year. Again, it's a very rough estimate. We, of course, had reported in August that it really depends on the next year's budget for the federal government, which has not been approved. There's only been a continuing resolution, which would essentially just roll over funds at the same amounts, but really depending on our election, we'll know more what those funding levels may be. But we're hopeful that it'd be at least what we received this year and hopefully a bit more. Also in that allocation, you'll see $40,099, which is that program income that's being allocated for capital, which is not being used for the social services because it's not eligible for that category, so it's rolled over to next year's capital. All in all, our HUD total is $1,640,099, again, subject to approval of our federal budget, which we'll know more in February 2017, our full allocations. And again, it's broken down, this summary is broken down into different categories of $320,000 for administration, $240,000 for public social services, which is $6,000 less than this current year. But again, we anticipate having, I'm optimistic of having additional funds next year, and that will get us to at least the same level as this current year. The capital neighborhood improvement projects are $1,080,099. Those are broken up in two categories. Our pre-designated funds, which is $680,099 into the homeless housing project, at $370,000, and our Section 108 loan repayment, $230,307, and Pacific Park Playground and Pool Shade Structure Project at $79,792. The undesignated, which is the amount that staff has proposed to RFP out to the community for community facility improvement projects for nonprofits, is $400,000. That's a little less than the current year of $476,605, but higher than the average that we've been using for $350,000 in the past. So that gives us a balanced estimated amount of $1,640,099. I would say the two capital projects, one you did receive a report on, that's the homeless housing project that we're looking at as a leverage funds with other housing funds for a acquisition of a homeless housing facility, probably something like a 13-unit multi-family structure that would assist with housing homeless persons with support services operated by a nonprofit. That is something that we're looking at for the next year. That will give us a total of $740,000, including this year's and last year and next year's. The new project that we have, and this is under a conceptual plan right now, is the Pacific Park Playground and Pool Shade Structure project. This is again at Pacific Park at the pool area, which is the deck area, and the playground area. And I believe we do have a small little overhead shot of the areas that we're looking at shade structures. Currently, there is very limited shade, trees, but not very many mature trees. Staff does use canopies to provide shade for the pool areas. We don't use them for the playground areas, but mainly in the shade area of the, mainly in the pool area. But this has also been very costly and very time-consuming, and doesn't provide really a permanent solution for the pool patrons. And mainly these are parents who are bringing in their small children for swim lessons or recreational swim, which parents have to wait outside the pool area, outside the pool in the deck area, and have some basically sun hitting them throughout those hot summer afternoons. So we as staff want to provide some shade structure elements to the both sides of the Pacific Park playground and the pool area. And again, we have just a conceptual idea where they're going. We have not gotten too much detail yet. We're working on some ideas of how the shade structures will look and what designs may be. We can bring that back to the committee in February at the next meeting. But that's our proposed funding for the set-aside programs for CDBG capital improvements. That concludes my report. Shade structures.
Could you please turn on your mic?
Can you put solar panels on those shade structures? Or they're not that type?
Chair of a decent committee member Ramirez, the pool itself has solar panels. We have 6 large areas, about 48 solar panels. The facility itself is LEED.
Side?
Yes. It's a LEED Platinum facility. The park itself, we don't have any solar panels in the playground area, but what staff is thinking is having shade structures similar to what we have at Cerritos Park, basically some sails. What we want to do is activate that park more during the day, during the summer, after the kids are using the services at the library or the community center. They walk out and play under the shade. So that's what we're looking for at both at the playground and at the pool.
Question, this is regarding Pacific, I guess this is southwest or whatever, that upper right-hand corner area, oval, isn't that a field? I recall people play soccer on that field.
North of the restrooms, the restroom building is the baseball field.
Okay.
We have the baseball field that's not pictured in the diagram.
Oh, I see. So there's more to the
Yeah, we
right
have
of
the
this.
baseball field
Okay.
and the picnic area and the multi-use soccer field that's on Pacific Edison.
Yeah, because there's a covered picnic area, right?
Yes, there's 2 picnic shelters.
Okay.
Any other question?
I have a general question. So, I mean, right now you've, just as a placeholder, have $79,792 for the shade project, potentially. That's close to the amount that, if you look at the total budget, that we've gone down in terms of what amount will be available between social service and capital. I know they're different dollars, but I'm just talking about totals, because there's about $82,605 I'm totaling between social services, it's gone down from 246 to 240. And again, I assume these are estimates because we have to see what HUD comes back with. And then the estimate for undesignated community projects on the capital side is from 476,605 down to 400,000. So this continues a downward trend, which makes it harder and harder to, provide sufficient funds with the number of applications that we get. I'm just kind of highlighting that, and that amount total, even though the Pacific project is technically a capital project, is around the amount of total reduction to the community. So while I, of course, support, as I said previously in my statements, public park projects, we also have to keep our eye on, what that impact has for the rest of the nonprofit organizations that are helping us on other fronts. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. And I also think it leads to the other issue, which we've been talking about generally from year to year, which is we are fast approaching a point where we may have to not, give money in some cases in order to give more to less organizations. So I know we try and please everyone, but we're getting to the point where it's not meaningful if you cut it up the pie too many ways. Let's hope HUD comes back with more money.
Optimistic for that. So.
More than what they're offering, what we're thinking now, 1.6. More than that, do we anticipate that there's a potential?
Well, Mr. Chair, it's hard to project what would happen with Congress. This is predicated on passing a budget, which has not been passed by Congress yet. Mm-hmm. They can either pass the continuing resolution and fund it for the whole year the same amount, or they can go back with the new Congress and look at the numbers and see if there's a need to increase the funding for these programs. So it really depends on the election.
Okay.
We won't know. It's our best estimate right now.
So on the homeless housing project, are there any updates in terms of where the city is going with that? I know that at last time we heard about that, there was no particular partner that was chosen yet. It was merely the city doing some advanced financial planning. So we had allocated an amount last year, and now with this proposed pre-designated amount, in your report you have $740,000 listed on a approximately $7.5 million total project. How many more years would you anticipate needing to accumulate funds? Because it looks like you've got the breakdown of a variety of funding sources, and there's still a funding gap of 250. So is it correct to assume that one more year of banking funds would get us to that project?
Mr. Armenia, we hope not. We hope to get this project going off the ground by next year.
Okay.
We have had some discussions with staff, housing staff, on some buildings. I can't disclose, of course, locations. We have different scenarios, whether it might be construction or rehab. So there's been scenarios that are now panning out. It's just not sitting there. We are taking some actions. We don't anticipate having to come back for third year for additional funds. That'll put us way too far behind our goals of getting this project on board.
Okay.
There has been some applications submitted for that funding gap through other homeless funds. So we're hoping to know about that later in the year as well. So
maybe by the time our next meeting comes, we'll have some idea.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And in terms of, who runs that program, I mean, is that going to be a third-party partner, or is it going to be the city itself?
Mr. Armin, this would be a third-party nonprofit, and we will look at certainly partnering with our main nonprofits here in Glendale that provide homeless services, but we haven't gone that far yet until we know the building is feasible.
Okay.
Do we have
I make a motion that we approve the preliminary fiscal year 2017-18 CDBG funding allocation plan by
Yes.
funding category.
I second that motion.
Second. Roll call, please.
Committee members Armenian?
Yes.
Markarian is absent. Ramirez?
Yes.
Sebastian is absent. Chair Avedisian.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next.
Next on the agenda is 4A5, review and approve a fiscal year 2017-18 request for funding proposal, RFP, for public social service projects and CDBG funding application. At A is a motion to approve a fiscal year 2017-18 RFP for public social services and CDBG funding application.
Do we have any report?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, in your packet you would have the proposed CDBG Public Social Services Funding Application and RFP. This is the application that we anticipate sending out to the agencies or having them fill out for the next year's funding based on the allocation of $240,000. We have not made any significant changes to the application. We think it's still a valid application, and we want to make sure the agencies certainly attend. What we have is the RFP technical assistance meeting. Certainly it's not a mandatory, but it's highly recommended, highly encouraged to attend, since we do have some additional requirements that are put on us by HUD to implement this current year and next year. So especially new agencies, as they anticipate having submitting proposals, they certainly should attend the meeting, because there will be some requirements that we want to have instituted as they apply for funding. Some of this is conflict of interest rules, which have come in light with HUD to and make sure that their boards and committee members from board members from the nonprofits certainly have conflict of interest policies, procedures when they vote on, contractors or services that receive CDBG funding. So there are a number of new items that we need to make sure that our nonprofits are aware of. So this will be a highly encouraged meeting to attend for the nonprofits. The applications will go out November 18th. That's after the council approves the funding plan, which we'll talk in a second. I'm hoping that will be approved by council November 8th. And proposals will be due at the end of the year, December 29th, which gives them almost 4 or 5 weeks or so to apply and submit the application. So we will begin sending out letters to our agencies about the dates, and we will place an ad in the news press so that agencies can or the public can see when our advertisements go out, and we'll of course put this on the city's webpage and our department webpage so that folks are available or aware of the application process and can apply for funds. The RFP. Any questions on the RFP?
Do we have any question? I think this is pretty much same as what we had last year, or at least to my knowledge. I don't think there is much change. I don't know if there is any questions.
Yeah, I don't see any.
No? If not, then do we need an approval?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I will make a motion to approve fiscal year 2017-2018 RFP for public social services and CDBG funding application.
Second.
Second. Roll call, please.
Committee members Armenian.
Yes.
Markarian is absent. Ramirez.
Yes.
Sebastian is absent. Chair Avedisian.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next, please.
Item 4A6, review and approve a fiscal year 2017-18 request for funding proposal RFP for capital improvement projects and CDBG funding application and priorities for capital improvement projects. At A is a motion to approve a fiscal year 2017-18 RFP for capital improvement projects and CDBG funding application and priorities for capital improvement projects.
Staff?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is the second RFP that we will be issuing out, and that's for capital improvement projects for CDBG. This is for community agencies. This is the $400,000, which is recommended under our funding plan for agencies to submit capital projects. Very similar to our schedule with the social services. These will be due December 29th. We will have a technical assistance meeting, again, with the agencies explaining the capital improvement projects. We certainly, again, highly encourage the agencies to attend and hear and some of the new information that we're required to give them as far as our conflict of interest policies that have been changed. Certainly want to reiterate the fact that they certainly should get started quickly on this, since they do need to get some good quotes on their estimates, and encourage them to be as detailed as possible on those capital requests, and so that we don't have as many questions from staff or the committee on the proposals. So we will again notify the agencies via letter, by some emails and our website, and an ad in the news press for agencies to apply. But again, one of the aspects, of course, is part of our motion is to develop, and certainly any questions regarding priorities. We certainly know that priorities are based on our CDBG funding plan that was approved, which is, again, those programs that centers that operate youth programs, senior programs, and homeless programs, certain priorities. But I believe in the past, the chair has requested if there's any additional priorities the committee feels needs to be addressed, that they should be addressed at this meeting. Again, last year was discussion on solar panels, whether or not those would qualify as priorities versus more hardcore improvements such as roofing repairs or plumbing repairs or other detrimental things that are more public safety. But again, that's the preview of the chair and the committee to inform staff of any additional priorities to be aware of.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
So along those lines, I've expressed this in the past, just to pick up where you left off on the solar issue, which is it's one thing when you renovate a bathroom, it has a direct quality of life, impact on the facility people who use and take advantage of the facility, versus solar panels on the roof that defray costs, utility costs, and it's a little bit, it's a little bit more vague, more of a gray area in terms of how those savings translate back into something that benefits the users of the facility, other than the operators being able to reduce costs, obviously, and so that they have more available funds. I have no doubt that the organizations we've allocated money to for solar panels do take advantage of the funds, for the funds that were from defrayed costs. But we as a committee, it's very difficult for us to make a judgment call on how that manifests itself back into benefit for the actual people using the facility, let's say. So I'm bringing that up in this context in terms of the application, because I'm wondering if there's something we could look at within this application that can more specifically get to this question, so that we are doing our job in ensuring that the funds that we allocate for a capital improvement have an actual tangible benefit back to the user. If you remember back when we saw the very first proposal on solar panels, I raised this question. It's not because I'm against solar or anything like that, but it's because these are expensive things to put in. The payback period is over a lengthy period of time, which is understandable. But the actual tangible net benefit back into the program, if I were to compare it to a bathroom renovation or in the case of, let's say, homeless shelters, the actual places where people live, the rooms where people live, we've done energy efficiency so that the rooms are warmer. Even that has a more tangible benefit back when you do energy efficiency in the sense of windows and things like that compared to solar. So I think we need to, I'm not saying we stop allocating money, but I do have a concern that the capital dollars in the CDBG program are slowly turning into a backdoor solar subsidy program that GWP already runs. LADWP runs in a more robust way than GWP. I know the dollars are always exhausted very rapidly, but we're not in the business of doing a energy efficiency or solar subsidy program. That's not really the purpose of these funds. Now, in the larger context, if there's some way we can tie back cost defrayed back into usage of those funds in other ways that then shows tangible benefit back to those program participants, then to me that clears it up a little bit better than where we're at today. Because if I just look at the last couple of years, we've been allocating hundreds of thousands of dollars down this path, and now my original worries are coming to fruition. I think it's all well-intentioned. It's just not well accounted for in the process that we have, and I think there's an opportunity here in the application to address that. Now, I know staff is looking for approval of this application, but I'm wondering if we can do some sort of approval with a contingency that you guys can take a look at how we might insert something into the application process that gets at this issue.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. We have the issue, we don't know
Wouldn't that be something the city council should address?
In what sense?
Do they think it's a priority or not? Because we've allocated based on their recommendation, and obviously we wouldn't have received the proposals if it hadn't been approved. So maybe it's something that the council should look at.
And they've approved it
Yes,
year over year.
absolutely.
But I think part of the process is either you could kind of say, okay, I'm drawing the line that you put in an exception, say we're not going to do solar, that type of capital project, and I don't know if that's an option, or put in some sort of element to the application where the applicant has to show how the defrayed costs, how those funds will be reinserted into some beneficial part of that's more tangible. It's a hard thing because you don't know, because those things fluctuate, right? The amounts fluctuate based on energy usage and things like that. But you are putting in projections on payback periods, and even if you're talking about and what I'm saying may affect the payback period or the payback equation even. But I think that the whole idea here is that you're defraying some sort of operational cost. That goes where?
Well, couldn't you equate it similar to the panels that are there at Pacific Park that the city put in? And obviously it must be a benefit. Kind of correlate the two. That's possible.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, on the application, we can just simply state what benefit would this project have to the user or users of the facility and programs. And if it's a high benefit and a positive benefit, then the committee would approve funding or approve the project. I mean, is that what you were looking for? Something?
Well, I think typically what's happened is what we've seen in proposals is that they come in and they'll say, and we expect to defray X amount of dollars of utility energy costs to the facility. It doesn't go one step further, which is what I'm looking for, to say, okay, so for that savings, what are you doing with that savings that what I'm suggesting is it's not good enough to just say we defray on operational costs. to be able to tie it back to the end user and beneficiary of the facility. So then what do you do? So let's say, well, we're going to, if an application says we are going to defray $15,000 of energy costs in the coming year because of this, so what are you doing with that $15,000 that then benefits the user? Because obviously the user, whether there's a solar panel or not, doesn't know the difference. All they care about is there electricity and do the lights come on? But how is that benefiting back to the end user? I think, I don't know the exact wording, but something that gets to saying that just saying I'm defraying costs, you got to take it one step further.
Okay.
Is that something that the city could assist the applicants with?
Yes, we can put that in the application, and we can have staff assist the applicant.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, so we're clear. We can, as Mr. Villarnican mentioned, revise our application to include a question about if it's a solar panel project, describe the amount of funding that is, the dollar amount that's being saved per year, and again, the question is where will that funds be moved? So if they're paying $2,000 in electricity costs that they're saving, what does that $2,000 get deferred to? Show us what proof they can show if in fact they have that funds to show it's going to go to hiring additional staff versus its overhead, and you decide, well, I'm just going to pay for my overhead rent. We decide if it's a service increase by hiring someone, or it's just going to pay the rent or my insurance renewal costs. I think that's something we want to see as staff as well, where the benefits are and where those funds would go towards.
Yeah, I mean, because what I'd like to get some differentiation on is, like last year we allocated $100,000 to a solar project, right? So what's the difference between us allocating $100,000 to a solar project and us saying, hey, organization, here's $100,000 to cover your utility costs? I mean, obviously I'm being a little bit loose with the actual facts. It's not a one direct correlation, but it is kind of like that. I mean, that's what we're saying here. And so if I were doing that, hypothetically, I would say, so since I'm going to cover your utility costs, why am I doing that as CDBG? I should be, in theory, doing that so then that allows you to do what for the users of that facility, right? It allows you to renovate the gym, right? Allows you to repair a leaky roof. It allows you, I don't know, whatever those things are that have a more direct impact. It allows you to renovate the bathrooms that the kids use every day in the gym, that sort of thing. We don't go that far. We need to go one step further if we are even going to continue down this path.
No, I really like that idea. I think that's going to really make it clear for the applicants and for us to know exactly where the money goes and how it's spent, what are the benefits at the end result. I think that's a great idea, Mr. Marvin. Do you have any questions, Mr. Ramirez?
I did have one, but I forgot what it was.
Okay. So can we approve this as is with the stipulation that staff will look at additional potential questions to address this issue? Okay.
Do we have 3 projects now with solar panels?
2. Yes.
Remember, Ramirez, we have 1, 2,
we did Door of
4
Hope.
Projects with solar panels.
We did Door of Hope.
Well,
right? That was the first one.
Well, no, we did Home and Edmond with this past year. It hasn't switched over yet to solar. The panels are there. They have a second phase. We have Door of Hope solar panels, and we have Essentia panels.
Yeah, we partially funded on that.
But Home and
They paid 50%.
Home and Men is 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So totaling for that.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to approve a fiscal year 2017-2018 RFP for capital improvement projects and CDBG funding with the stipulation that staff will take a look at adding some questions that will address the issue of more direct benefit of any potential solar panel funding, solar energy funding to end users.
Do you want to make a stipulation on that?
Does that work?
Good. That's good.
Okay.
Okay. Second.
Second. Roll call, please.
Sure. Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Markarian is absent, Ramirez,
Yes.
Tashin is absent, Chair Avedisian.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
All right. Do we have any comments? Staff?
And Mr. Chair, we do have certain events that we'd like to notify the committee of. But before we put those on the screen, I wanted to, again, to remind the committee that we do have all-day session on February 24th, 2017, next year, which is a Friday, and that's our all-day session to review the CDBG social service projects. So please put that in your calendar. The following Monday on February 27th, a half-day, is when we'll review the capital improvement funding proposals. So 1.5 days coming up in February. We don't anticipate any special meetings between now and then, but if something does come up, we will notify the committee that we would hope to know a little bit more about the budget by then. That would give us some good news, we hope, next year. So in our, speaking of Housing Rights Center, we do have a fair housing workshop for property owners and managers. Not just fair housing, but it's tenant and landlord workshop information for property owners and managers coming up on Wednesday, November 2nd from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Pacific Community Center. If you want RSVP, please call Francis at that number there, which I can't see, but it's certainly a event that's open to anyone. The Housing Rights Center does 2 workshops, one for tenants usually in the spring, and one for property owners to, again, be informed of their certain their rights and their legal aspects of their housing and tenant landlord, especially questions about evictions and security deposits, and especially local laws, because there are some local just cause eviction requirement the city of Glendale has that is different from some of the state laws. So it's important for our property owners and our managers to be informed of these laws and regulations. So that's coming up in November 2nd.
Number is 800-477-5977, extension 1102. My eyesight's pretty good, huh?
Good. I need to get my eyes checked.
Oh, see, now she makes it easy.
And even smaller text, we do have Mr. Bolonikian with us at this meeting.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, on November 3rd at 6:30, we will be having a community meeting regarding the Wilson Middle School's multi-use field. This project was one of the projects approved with our DIF Development Impact Fee Plan that was approved in March 29 of 2016. So we're hoping we get a nice crowd of the neighborhood, soccer teams, lacrosse teams. It'll be a multi-use field, not only a soccer team, open to the public. We'll have a joint use agreement with Glendale Unified to use their facilities after school, nights and weekends. It'll be open to the public. We'll have a running track for the residents to come out and exercise. The facility will be available for soccer, lacrosse, flag football, Pop Warner football, and so on. So our meeting will be held at Wilson Middle School Library at 6:30 on November 3rd.
Thank you.
What took so long
In regards to?
in regards to this joint use?
There are a few joint use projects we're working on with Glendale Unified. Basically the planning and the funding. DIF funds, we have $16 million allocated to different projects, one being Wilson Middle School. We're also looking at other school sites south of the 134 where we can open up for after-school programming.
Very good.
Thank you.
Chair Avedisian, members of the committee, if I may, I just want to let the viewing public know that if they want to have information about upcoming events for the Community Services and Parks Department, they can go onto our website and sign up to receive the monthly newsletter. And the address is www.glendalecA.gov/parks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I have one more event that I'd like to invite you to. December 3rd at 10:30, we will be holding the Palmer Park grand opening. Palmer Park has been closed since February. Basically a $3.4 million project, park project will be completed within the next few weeks, and hopefully, well, we will be open December 3rd. So we're inviting you to the opening ceremony.
What time is that at?
At 10:30, program starts at 11. We have an expanded basketball court, one full court and one half court. We also have a large expanded skate park element, and we have a expanded wading pool, which the neighbors in that area will really enjoy that in the summer. It's a beautiful wading pool, so we're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Good
job.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been busy. Definitely. City staff is doing everything we can get this. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, just a reminder that that was partially funded with CDBG funds as well, and the long project we're due. And as we speak about park improvements, one of our pride and joys, where it's really a heavily used park, and the new features that are there now, which is some wading pool and the skate area, are a result of community input that we receive through our meetings and through our contact with the community. So it's always changing park to park. And so these are certainly, advisory committee has been, and we'll certainly invite the previous committee members, Olivares, certainly very supportive of the funds that were granted through our CIP designated funds portion of CDBG budget, but it does help tremendously to beautify our parks and make these adaptable to the changing community needs. And got a lot of young kids who are skaters and want to get out there and skate. So
Great, great.
I have a question. When is that technical assistance meeting you're talking about? And I think that was for capital
December
programs.
I believe November
applicants?
30th.
yes, November 30th, Wednesday at 2 p.m., both for the capital projects and the social service projects at the here in the city of Glendale in our Perkins Community Room. If anybody's interested and knows of agencies, they can certainly call me at 818-548-3715 for any questions about the RFP, which will be coming out several weeks. I also was remiss in mentioning that we will take the committee's recommendations and approval of the priorities, the RFP, and funding allocation to the City Council on November 8th with a joint City Council Housing Authority meeting at 3 p.m. That would be certainly welcome the committee to attend and answer any questions possibly from the council, but I would assume that we've had a very good majority decisions today, and we appreciate the committee's approval of our plan and work hopefully diligently to get those RFPs out and get some projects going for next year.
What date was that?
November 8th, Tuesday. That's at 3. Next Tuesday, next in 2 weeks.
Next
Election day.
Sorry, election day.
Election day.
The council's meeting on election
Yeah.
day? Wow.
Yes, a very limited council agenda, but we're very fortunate to be in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So we'll
We're having it early.
be may not be the highlight of that day, but it is what it is. So we will
sun.
certainly be there for our approvals.
Great. Thank you.
I move we adjourn.
Adjourned. Thank you.